My name is Claire Anderson, 28 years old, a software engineer living and working in Seattle. If you've ever had a moment where you believed your whole life had finally found its purpose, then you might understand a bit of how I felt that day. The $10 million contract had just been signed, marking the culmination of years of grinding away on my medical AI algorithm research. When the corporate director shook my hand and offered congratulations, I felt like all those all-nighters coding, those rushed mornings surviving on just coffee instead of breakfast, had finally paid off. In that instant, my thoughts turned straight to my family. Despite all the times I'd been dismissed compared to my older sister, I still clung to a stubborn belief that if I achieved something truly monumental, they'd see me differently. I imagined my parents smiling, proudly bragging to relatives that their youngest daughter had made it big. I pictured Olivia, my sister always called the pride of the Anderson family, finally acknowledging my talent. As I stepped out of the corporate headquarters, snow was falling thick and heavy, each flake sparkling under the city lights. I pulled my thick coat tight around me, my hands trembling as I clutched the folder. My heart pounded, not from the cold, but because I was about to bring the biggest news of my life home to my family. The drive to our suburban family home felt longer than ever. I slowed the car, letting myself savor the imagined warmth. The house lit up, my parents calling my name, my sister's eyes wide with surprise mixed with envy, but eventually offering congratulations. I'd never longed to walk through that front door so badly. But the reality waiting for me behind it was nothing like what I'd pictured. When I stepped inside, the living room was lit up but lacked the warmth I'd envisioned. My dad was buried in his newspaper, Mom was glued to her phone, and Olivia sat at the kitchen table with a glass of red wine in hand. Her first glance told me everything. There would be no congratulations. I smiled, my voice brimming with pride I couldn't hide. I did it. The $10 million AI algorithm contract got signed this morning. I held up the folder like a trophy, but instead of joy, I saw Olivia smirk, her eyes icy cold. Your algorithm? She sneered. You gonna claim the project I pitched in all those meetings, the one I coordinated with the clients, as all yours? I froze. You know every line of code, every update was me pulling all-nighters. You managed the project, sure, but… Olivia laughed, a hollow, empty sound. You always think you're so special. Without me paving the way, you think you'd land this deal? You think those directors would trust a 28-year-old kid to handle it solo? My dad stayed silent, eyes fixed on his paper. Mom winced but said nothing. My chest felt heavy. After all these years, the favoritism hadn't changed. I'd stubbornly held on to hope, and now it's shattered. I don't want to argue. I just wanted everyone to know I did it. It's my real work. I tried to keep my voice steady, but my hand gripping the folder shook. Olivia stood, stepping closer, her breath reeking of wine. You always play the victim card. Mom and Dad are tired of your drama. This time, you won't steal the spotlight. I backed away until my back hit the stair railing. My heart raced. Olivia, stop. This isn't a game. Her eyes flashed with something dark, resentment, explosive. Then suddenly her hand shoved hard into my shoulder. I lost my balance. The sensation of free fall hit like a rush, everything happening in a split second. I saw her face looming above, cold as stone. I heard Mom's short, sharp scream. Then it was just the heavy thud of impact, my head cracking against the hard wooden step. Pain exploded like lightning. Everything blurred. The last sound I heard was the distant, echoing beep of a heart monitor. Have you ever experienced a moment where the world around you shatters in the blink of an eye? From the peak of elation, I'd plummeted straight into the abyss of betrayal and darkness. People always say family is the safest place. But for me, that night, my own family became the most dangerous place of all. And my journey, from someone who seemed to have lost everything, to finding justice and learning forgiveness, began with that fall. If you've ever been dismissed, abandoned by the very people meant to protect you, stick with me. Because what happened after that fateful night will show you. Some truths hurt worse than physical wounds. But from them, we find a strength no one can take away. I heard the steady beep before I saw anything. A distant, rhythmic sound, reminding me I was still alive. When my heavy eyelids finally fluttered open, the harsh white hospital light stabbed into my eyes, making my head spin. The smell of antiseptic filled the air, and then the first truth hit. I was lying in a hospital bed. "She's awake!" A woman's voice rang out, probably a nurse. I tried to move my lips, my voice raspy like my throat was scorched. "How long have I been here?" The nurse hesitated, then answered gently. 2 weeks. You've been in a coma for 2 weeks. 2 weeks? I went numb. 2 weeks locked in darkness, hovering between life and death. I scanned the room, searching for a familiar face, my parents, or at least Olivia. But the sterile space held only machines and the nurse's distant gaze. "Where's my family?" I asked, a fragile hope flickering in my eyes. The nurse looked uneasy. I knew right away something was wrong. After a few seconds of silence, she said, "They haven't come. Your parents only called once at the start, and—" I struggled to sit up, my heart pounding. "And what?" The nurse looked down, her voice catching. "They said, you brought it on yourself." Those words stabbed like a knife to the chest. My parents, who should have held my hand, had chosen to abandon me, even as I lay motionless in a hospital bed. I bit my lip until it bled, fighting back tears. In that moment, I realized the deepest wound wasn't in my head or leg. It was in my heart. The days that followed turned the hospital room into an iron cage. I lay listening to machines in place of family inquiries. Every footstep in the hall made my heart skip, hoping someone would open the door. But it was just endless silence. I remembered family dinners from childhood, Olivia sharing some silly school story, my parents bursting into laughter, calling her brilliant. I'd brag about a programming award, and they'd just murmur, "Good job." I'd grown used to being overlooked, but I'd never imagined the abandonment could be this cruel, even when my life hung in the balance. One afternoon, as I struggled to flex my stiff fingers, the door swung open. Olivia walked in, designer purse in hand, lips painted bright red, eyes cold as ice. "Oh, you're still alive?" she said by way of greeting, like I'd just woken from a nap. I was speechless. My body ached, but her attitude cut deeper. "Sis," I croaked, "why?" Olivia leaned over the bed, whispering with mocking venom. "You think you had a future? Dream on. That contract's already handled, you're just collateral damage." I was stunned. She didn't just want to take me down physically, she wanted to erase the career I'd built brick by brick. I wanted to scream, to accuse her, but my weakened body only let me clutch the bedsheet, watching her saunter out with a triumphant smile. The door slammed shut, leaving me in heavy darkness. That night, I didn't sleep. I replayed Dad's indifferent stares, Mom's scoldings, Olivia's mocking laughs. Maybe I'd been naive thinking a $10 million contract would change them. To them, I'd always be Olivia's faded shadow. In desperation, I reached for the phone the nurse had left. My trembling fingers opened the banking app. At least I had some savings for medical bills. But the screen showed a cold alert. Account frozen by court order. I called the bank, voice still shaky. The rep explained, "There's a court-ordered incapacity restriction stating you're unfit to manage finances post-injury. Your account is temporarily under a guardian's trusteeship." Guardian? I didn't need to ask who, Olivia. I dropped the phone, shaking with rage and helplessness. It felt like I'd died once already, and when I woke, someone else had rewritten my world. Do you know the feeling when everything you trust crumbles at once? When the one home you have turns into a den of daggers? I'd thought the stairfall was my life's worst accident, but no. Waking up was the real tragedy. Betrayed by my own family, my sister stealing not just my career but my autonomy. I lay there, hospital lights glaring in my eyes, and I knew I had two choices: accept my fate or fight back. I didn't know how, but one thing was certain: I wouldn't let my life end in silence. I stared at the hospital ceiling, eyes brimming with tears, but a different fire ignited inside. I had to uncover the truth. If you find my story gripping, comment why. If you think it's not hooking you yet, comment N. And get ready, because in the next chapter, I'll tell you how I started unraveling the plot they'd woven, step by step, piece of evidence by piece, no matter the cost in blood and tears. They say truth always finds a way to surface, even when others try to bury it deep. I didn't expect that after the horrific fall and long days of abandonment, the truth would come knocking in the form of a stranger, a man at my hospital room door. He introduced himself in a deep, steady voice. Daniel Parker, attorney. I think we need to talk. I stared at the leather briefcase he carried, a thick stack of files peeking out. Instinct told me this was the turning point. Daniel sat down, his eyes serious. No pity, just gravity. Ms. Anderson, he said, a colleague from your company hired me to look into your unusual disappearance, and what I found, it's deeply concerning. He opened the folder, pulling out stamped court documents. My heart clenched. At the bottom of the page was my signature, clear as day. But I'd never signed it. This is a legal power of attorney, declaring you incapacitated to manage assets, transferring decision rights to Olivia Anderson. My sister's name glared from the page like an accusation. I gripped my hands tight, fingertips trembling. If you want to understand more about the toxic relationship between Olivia and me, check out my previous videos on the channel, where I dive into the childhood shadowed by favoritism and comparisons. No way, I muttered. That's not my signature. Daniel nodded. Exactly. It's forged. And that's just the tip of the iceberg. The next day, another woman arrived. Dr. Rebecca Price, who'd directly overseen my medical records. Her face was stern, but her voice full of empathy. Claire, she began, I've reviewed your entire file, and I spotted some irregularities. She showed me the notes. Abnormally high sedative doses, a diagnosis of permanent neurological damage, despite me waking up fully aware. Someone tampered with the records, adding details to prove you'd never recover. I went cold. So Olivia didn't just want the contract, she wanted to paint me as a legal invalid. Before I could process it, a text from my best friend Cynthia popped up on my phone. Cynthia worked at the same company, always quietly backing me when everyone else sided with Olivia. If you want to know why this friendship means so much, watch my video, The One Person Who Believed Me When My Family Turned Away. The text read, Claire, you have to see this. That evening, she snuck into the hospital with a USB drive. On it were internal emails from Olivia to the director. Claire's never coming back. I'll take her position. The contract's safe with me. Each word sliced into my memories like a knife. Olivia didn't just want the credit, she wanted to wipe my existence from the company. A week later, Daniel introduced me to someone new, a private investigator, a seasoned female PI. She laid bank statements in front of me. Look here, she said, pointing to transfers. Olivia paid $10,000 to Mark, a colleague of yours. And get this? Mark drafted those fake legal docs. I choked up. Mark, who'd always been so friendly, turned out to be a paid puppet. He even smiled and congratulated me when the algorithm contract was signed, I whispered. It was all fake. The PI nodded. They thought you'd never wake up, but you did. And now, everything's tipping in your favor. I knew lying in the hospital wouldn't cut it. I needed to act, even if my body was still weak. One morning, I signed early discharge papers, hobbling out on crutches with a small voice recorder hidden in my coat pocket. My plan was risky: confront Olivia face to face and get her to confess. I met her at a quiet coffee shop downtown in Seattle. The sky was overcast that day, cold wind whipping my face, but inside, I burned with fire. Olivia arrived on time, in a sleek business suit, eyes dripping disdain. She sat across from me, idly stirring her latte. "Oh, my little sis," she said with a smirk. "Awake already? How surprising." I forced a smile, hiding my shaking hand under the table. "I just wanted to ask about the contract. How's it going?" Olivia shrugged, leaning back. "Going great. Thanks to me, of course. You, though." She paused, eyes gleaming with victory. "Don't have a future anymore." I played it cool, nodding slightly. "You mean that $10 million contract is yours now?" A flicker of hesitation, then Olivia laughed, arrogant and loud. "Yeah, that $10 million contract is mine now, and you're just excess baggage." The recorder in my pocket hummed silently, capturing every damning word. My heart hammered. fear mixed with relief. Finally, I had the clearest evidence yet. As Olivia stood to leave, I sat frozen, hands still shaking. I knew that moment was the pivot. From abandoned victim, I'd become a living witness against my family's dark plot. I don't know if you've ever been betrayed by your own blood. That pain cuts deeper than any wound. But in that instant, I realized I wasn't their pawn anymore. I held the ace. There are moments in life when truth doesn't arrive like a bang, but like shards of glass falling, glaring, sharp, impossible to ignore. For me, those shards were the recording, the internal emails, the bank statements, and the tampered medical files. They piled up, painting a grim picture. The sister I'd hoped would protect me was the one who pushed me into the pit, and my parents stayed silent, as if they approved. I sat at Attorney Daniel's desk, listening as he dissected each piece of evidence. The tiny recorder played Olivia's voice, each word hitting like a stone. That $10 million contract is mine now, and you're just excess baggage. Daniel paused the tape, eyes locked on mine. This is our strongest proof, but we have more. He slid over the printed email Cynthia had given me. Olivia to the company director. Claire's never coming back. I've taken over the whole project. I stared at the shaky words. No more guesses. This was cold, hard fact. Olivia had plotted to erase me from the company. Then the PI presented the bank records. Cold numbers, but each transfer a blade. $10,000 to Mark, the colleague who'd fake smiled through congratulations. Turns out it was all bought and paid for. Finally, Dr. Rebecca provided the medical docs, fabricated details on permanent neurological damage added to my file. I flashed back to Olivia's hospital visit, her smirk as she said I had no future. She'd been certain I'd be locked in hopelessness forever. Each piece of evidence carved deeper into my memories, forcing me to relive my childhood. I saw little Claire, 8th grade me, running home with a programming award, only to get Dad's indifferent, good, but Olivia just got elected class president. I saw my 16th birthday, Mom spending all day on Olivia's lavish party, while I got a small cake with sloppy happy birthday scrawled on it. I remembered college graduation. I'd hoped they'd come see me as top of my computer science class, but they flew to California for Olivia's art exhibit. I forced a smile, telling friends they were on a work trip. But deep down, I knew I was never the priority. Those memories crashed in now, blending with the present. I wondered, had they always believed Olivia was the worthy one, so now they chose silence, or even complicity? Daniel tapped the desk lightly, snapping me back. Claire, do you know what this means? I met his gaze, voice hoarse. It means they wanted to destroy me. He nodded. And it means we have grounds to sue your entire family for intellectual property theft, conspiracy, and legal fraud. Not just Olivia, but your parents too. My heart twisted. I'd imagined dragging my parents to court would hurt, but now it felt like release. I wasn't the kid begging for scraps of love anymore. I was an adult robbed of my work, my dignity, my humanity, and I had every right to take it back. But doubt clawed at me. No matter what, they were still my parents. Was I too cruel to drag them into the legal spotlight? I remembered Mom's gentle eyes as a child, brushing my hair in front of the mirror. Dad teaching me to ride a bike on the suburban road. Those rare, beautiful memories intruded, making the pain double. I sighed, whispering, Daniel, if I do this, it means cutting them off forever. Do you get that? He looked at me, firm. Claire, they cut you off first, leaving you in that hospital. Now it's time for you to choose justice. That night, I left Daniel's office alone, crutches clicking through Seattle's rain. Streetlights shimmered in oily puddles. I stopped at the Central Park, my old student hideaway for peace. On the cold wooden bench, I gazed at the slate-gray sky. Heavy raindrops hit my cheek, mingling with tears. It was a storm of memories, drowning me yet lifting me up. I whispered into the chill wind like a vow. I'll take back who I am. People say court isn't just where justice is served, it's where raw truth gets laid bare. But I'd never thought I'd stand in a courtroom, facing not just enemies but the very people I called family. Early spring, Seattle's sky brooding, fog cloaking the federal courthouse. I hobbled in on crutches. the tap of wood on cold tile echoing like a countdown to fate. In that moment, I spotted my family. Dad sat rigid, eyes averted. Mom bowed her head, fingers trembling on her handkerchief. Olivia and Mark sat straight-backed, glares like they wanted to devour me. I told myself, Claire, this is when you don't flinch. This is your life. The trial began. Daniel rose, calm but his voice booming. Your Honor, we have irrefutable evidence that defendants Olivia Anderson and Mark Collins intentionally forged documents, bribed and orchestrated a conspiracy to steal the plaintiff's intellectual property, Ms. Claire Anderson's. Murmurs rippled through the room. I held my breath as Daniel presented each piece. First, the coffee shop recording. Olivia's voice rang out crystal clear. That $10 million contract is mine now, and you're just excess baggage. The room froze. I glanced at Olivia, her face ashen but lips curled in defiance. Next, the internal email. Daniel projected Olivia's words to the boss. Claire's never coming back. I've taken over the whole project. Those words pierced my memories like arrows. Then the bank statements. $10,000 to Mark, with a shady note. Mark stared at the floor, hands shaking. And finally, Dr. Rebecca took the stand, detailing the altered medical records. Her voice steady. The notes on permanent neurological damage are fabricated. I confirm the file was unlawfully tampered with. Each exhibit hammered down like blows, shattering the facade Olivia and Mark had built. When it was the defense's turn, Olivia stood, her voice clipped. I did it to protect the company. Claire was unstable, unfit to lead a project this big. I locked eyes with her, fear gone. If I was so unstable, who built the algorithm? Who worked nights for years? Olivia went quiet, eyes darting. Mark stammered, trembling. I just followed Olivia. I didn't want to get involved, but she promised to pay. His voice faded like a confession. Then it was my turn to testify. The room went dead silent. Slowly, I recounted my story. The stair fall, the coma days, waking to a cold hospital room, the nurse saying my parents never visited. I spoke of the abandonment, being treated like a burden, unworthy of love. My voice cracked. I lay there in the dark for 2 weeks, waiting for a hand to hold, a word of comfort from my parents. But nothing came. They left me. I didn't just lose my health, I lost my family. As my words landed, I heard a chair scrape behind me. Turning, I saw Mom sob, collapsing onto Dad's shoulder. Then, in everyone's shock, she fainted. Dad caught her in a panic, his weathered face quivering like never before. My heart squeezed. Part of me wanted to rush over to hold her, but I stood still. I knew this was the price of their long silence. Finally, the judge returned. Her voice rang out. After reviewing all evidence and testimony, the court finds defendant Olivia Anderson guilty of fraud and forgery, sentenced to 4 years imprisonment. Defendant Mark Collins, accomplice, sentenced to 2 years. As for Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, the plaintiff's parents, the court determines indirect complicity and negligence, holding them civilly liable with mandated compensation to the plaintiff. The verdict echoed like a freedom bell. I exhaled, legs wobbling. Tears flowed, not just for justice served, but for the raw emotional scars bleeding inside. I'd won, but victory wasn't sweet. It was truth, stark and painful. I left the courtroom, taking a deep breath. Seattle's spring wind bit cold, but in my chest was open space. I knew this wasn't the end. Because after justice, I faced a harder choice. What to do with the hatred and shattered family ties? There was a moment in the trial when I knew my family's fate had forked forever. It was when the judge looked straight at me, her voice echoing. Does the plaintiff wish to seek enhanced penalties for the parents for indirect complicity or maintain the civil level? The courtroom held its breath. I heard my heart beat like a drum in my chest. All eyes on me. Daniel waited. Olivia glared from the defendant's bench. Dad, who'd always let things slide in silence, now bowed his head, hands trembling. Beside him, Mom was still pale, not fully recovered from fainting. I breathed deep. All the months of abandonment, the hospital pain, the childhood dismissals, surged in that instant. I had every right to make them pay dearly. But then, another voice in my heart. Will revenge bring peace? I lifted my head, voice clear. Your Honor, I don't seek increased penalties for my parents. Let them face only civil responsibility. They've already lost something worth more than money. They've lost their daughter's trust. And that's the heaviest sentence. No one breathed. I saw Daniel glance at me, surprise mixed with respect. And Dad, he cried. For the first time in my life, I saw him cry in front of me. After the trial, I moved into a small apartment downtown in Seattle. The place was bare, just basics, but to me, it symbolized freedom. No more Olivia's shadow, no heavy parental silence, no tired old comparisons. Waking up there the first morning, I stood at the window, watching rare spring sun pierce the fog. I smiled. For the first time in months, freedom tasted strange, bittersweet, yet sweet. I cut off all family contact. No texts, no calls, no hoping for validation, and oddly, I felt lighter. But I knew my story wasn't just mine. In those long hospital days, I'd wondered, how many others were abandoned like me? How many patients lay alone, waiting for a hand that never came? That question wouldn't let go, and I decided to do something about it. From the $10 million contract payout, I set aside a huge chunk to found the Anderson Fund. Its goal? Support patients abandoned by family, covering treatment costs, legal aid, and even transitional housing post-hospital. I wanted to turn my pain into lifelines for others. The fund's launch was in a small, warm auditorium. Friends, colleagues, supporters from my dark days, all there. I took the podium, heart racing, but my voice rang true. I once lay alone in a hospital, believing my family would come, but the door never opened. That abandonment? I'll never forget it, and I believe no one deserves it. The Anderson Fund exists to ensure that anyone in that spot gets a hand to hold, a foundation to stand on. I paused, scanning the room. Many wiped quiet tears. In that moment, I saw my pain transform into something bigger. Of course, some nights I still dream of Olivia. Her face at sentencing, eyes burning with hate. Memories of my parents still hit, choking me up. But instead of resentment, I set them aside. I didn't forgive overnight, but I chose grace as my own release. Once Daniel asked, "Why choose grace when you could have made them pay harder?" I replied, "Because I don't want my life chained to hate. I've been in the dark, I know how it feels, I won't extend it." On the last night of spring, I stood at my new apartment window. Seattle glowed below, traffic humming. I pressed my forehead to the cool glass, whispering, "I don't need their approval. I'm strong enough to rewrite my life, with grace." Tears fell, but this time they were tears of liberation. This journey, from a betrayal-fueled fall to courtroom justice, and finally choosing grace, taught me more than any career win ever could. I've learned true strength isn't in revenge or proving who's right. It's in rising, staring down the pain, and turning it into good for others. When I founded the Anderson Fund, it wasn't just to help abandoned patients. It was my way of saying darkness can't swallow light, and loved ones' silence can't snuff out faith in humanity. I believe we all deserve a second chance at a full life. If you've journeyed with me this far, maybe you've seen it too. Sometimes, loss is how we find ourselves, and forgiveness is the key to true freedom. I hope my story gives you hope that everyone deserves that shot at wholeness. If this touched your heart, hit like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the next stories.